So we are discussing SEMA, boardroom dynamics. SEMA 2023, question 2, 5. So we start with the question 2. Question 2 was asking, question 2A, highlight 3 advantages of the two-tier board. Highlight 3 advantages of the two-tier board. The two-tier board. I want to say, I think it was 3 marks. So when you talk of the highlighting the two-tier board, that one we have discussed it under the board structure, where we say that the organization has 2 types of board structures. That is the one-tier or the unitary board structure, and then the other one is the two-tier board structure. What is the distinction between them? When you talk of the one-tier board structure or the unitary, the common feature that is used to distinguish both of them is that for the unitary structure or the one-tier structure, both the independent or the non-executive directors and the executive directors sit on the same board. While for the non-executive, while for the two-tier, the common distinction is that both, it consists of both the supervisory and the management board. So they are distinction. And I said, when you talk of the supervisory board, it's whereby it consists of the non-executive. They are supervising what we said in the corporate governance, supervising the supervisory or overseeing the functions of the other, the management board. So what are some of the advantages of the two-tier board? One is that there's a clear separation of duties within the board. Clear separation of duties within the board. Clear separation of duties within the board. Why? For the supervisory board, it deals with overseeing the functions of the other board. For the management board, it deals with the day-to-day activities. So there's a clear separation. That is very different from the unitary board. Why? Because both the executive and the non-executive directors, they are sitting on the same board. So we are not so sure if the non-executive directors are performing their duties of overseeing. The other one, it encourages diversity and stakeholders' interest representation, encourages diversity and stakeholders representation. When we were discussing this topic, we asked ourselves, what are some of the distinctions between non-executive, the two-tier and the one-tier? One of the common distinction is on matters concerning stakeholder representation, where we said for the unitary board, there is limited stakeholder representation. Why? Because we know that one of the parameters of good governance structures is that the board of an organization should be of optimum size. When you talk of optimum size, it means that it should not be too large or too small. And therefore, as we try to ensure we meet the standards of corporate governance, it will need us to limit the stakeholder representation of a unitary board. But what happens for the two-tier board? There is more stakeholder representation. Why? There are two boards. So we will have the stakeholders that will be in the management board and the stakeholders that will be in the supervisory board. So there is diversity and stakeholder representation. Promotes a systems of checks and balances within the board. Promotes a system of checks and balances within the board, checks and balances within the board, thus better decision making, thus better decision making, thus better decision making. Why are we saying there's a system of checks and balances within the board? When you are on this aspect of clear separation of duties, the supervisory board, it's overseeing the performance. We actually said that when you talk of the decision-making process, for the unitary board, it's very fast. But when you come to the other one, or the two-tier, the decision-making process is slower. Why? Because the decisions made by the management board must be approved by the supervisory board. They must be approved by the supervisory board. So those are some of the answers. Any other answer that you have? We have made the 3 marks that were being asked. Before I go to the other question, any other answer so that we can see if we can consider it? Which other answer do you have on the advantages of two-tier board? We agreed anytime you're in that exam room, the first important thing is if you are asked on the advantages of a two-tier board, first remind yourself, give the definition of a two-tier board. What is the meaning of a two-tier board? So that any answer that you are trying to give, it is in relation. You are trying to make reference to the understanding or the explanation that you have given yourself in that example. So those are some of the answers that were expected there. Question 2B. Promote better shareholder conflict resolution because of the supervisory board. Shareholder conflict resolution, or because they are two different boards, therefore people can easily make or they can resolve their interest or issues separately without affecting the operations of the organization. The stakeholders' interest, this one, I've talked of it. The stakeholder representation. Question 2B. Question 2B. Summarize 4 dimensions evaluated. Summarize 4 dimensions evaluated in. Summarize 4 dimensions evaluated. The performance management of board members. 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 What is the examiner asking us? Any person who can interpret for us? What is the examiner asking? I want to know, what is the examiner asking before you give the answer, sister? What is the examiner asking? Yes, the parameters to be evaluated in a board. That is what we were being asked, the parameters to be evaluated in a board. 1, Evaluation of the board as a whole. Evaluation of the board as a whole. Even somebody can give some brief explanation. For example, what do you evaluate the board, or what are the different areas that are evaluated under the board as a whole? What do you think are some of the things that you need to evaluate under the board as a whole? That is a concept that you have from the corporate governance class at the intermediate level. What is the evaluation of the board? What are some of these things that you can check? Yes, board communication. That is what we commonly say in our corporate governance, the dynamics and functioning of the board. For example, the dynamics and functioning of the board. When you talk of the dynamics and functioning of the board, we are talking of that, what you have talked of. The communication, the transparency within the board, the dynamics and functioning of the board. The other parameter that you are talking of there, Musa, is what we call board structure. The other parameter that we easily evaluate under the board as a whole is the board structure. Now, what is the board structure? Its composition and size. Its composition and size. We commonly assess the board composition and size. Does it consist of the executive and non-executive directors? Is it of optimum size? Is it too large? Is it too small? etc. The other one is the evaluation. The other parameter I've seen you have talked of it is the evaluation of board committees. Evaluation of the board committees. What are some of the issues that you will try to evaluate under the committees? In our syllabus, we are being asked, or there's a subtopic that is dealing with a committee governance structure. The committee governance structure. Yes. What are some of the parameters that you need to check? Correct. The frequency of meetings. Frequency of meetings is something that can be, that needs to be evaluated. The frequency of meetings. Another one. The size of the committees, correct answer. So here you have the frequency of meetings. The size of the committees. Another thing that is evaluated. What are the tenure of the committees? Why? Because we have the two types of committees. The ad hoc committee and the standing committees. What are their objectives or functions of the committees, etc. The third one, evaluation. Evaluation of the individual directors. The evaluation of the individual directors. Evaluation of the individual directors. What are we testing on the evaluation of the individual directors? Yes, I teach. Their functions, correct answer, Margaret. Correct answer. What are the evaluation of the individual directors? What will we be evaluating? Evaluation of the individual directors. What will we be evaluating? What are some of the things that we will be evaluating under the directors? Their skills and competence, correct answer. Do they have the competence? Actually, here we will be testing their skills and competencies. Can you remember the knowledge, the technical competence, the industrial competence, the interpersonal relationships? How do they relate with the others while they are performing the objectives? And then the other one, evaluation of the chairperson. Evaluation of the chairperson of the board. Chairperson of the board or the chairman of the board. Evaluation of the chairperson of the board. So what are some of the important things that you need to know about the chairperson? What are some of the functions of the chairperson? Because those are the ones that we will be evaluating. Act as a link between the management and the shareholders. What is their relationship with the CEO or the executive management, etc. So those are some of those are the answers that were expected on the dimension. Is the balance of power? Yes. Do they have a good? Is there any balance of power within the board? Question 2C. Explain 4 negative uses of power in the organization. Explain 4 negative uses of power in an organization. I want somebody to interpret for us. What is the examiner testing? 4 marks. What is the examiner testing? Let us have somebody interpreting and telling us. What is the examiner testing? Explain 4 negative uses of power in an organization. Okay, the disadvantages of power. So a good example, if it is the disadvantages of power, what is an example that you can give? What is the answer that you can give? Those of us who we did the yesterday's class, you cannot convince me. You cannot convince me. You are not interpreting the question very well. Please convince me that you understood what we said. Outline 4 negative uses of power in an organization. 4 negative uses of power in an organization. Yes, correct answer, Cynthia. Yes, that is what we say. What is the meaning of organizational politics? We said that it is whereby a person that is having power is trying, or the use of power to influence the decision making within the organization. You are using, or you are using your power to influence the decision making or controlling the behaviors within the organization. That is what we called the organizational politics. And therefore, you're being asked, now, what are the negative uses of power? So what are the answers? Correct answer, Sheila. Yes. Can we agree that you need to, what I said in one of the classes, that before you answer these questions, please ensure you give yourself time. So 1, withholding of key information from the decision makers. Holding of key information. Withholding of key information from the decision makers. From the decision makers. 2, forming powerful coalitions, correct? Forming powerful coalitions to influence decision making within the organization. Forming powerful coalitions to influence decision making, influence decision making within the organization, decision making within the organization. Another one, attacking and blaming others for any organizational activities, attacking and blaming others for any organizational activity, for any organizational activity. The other one, you have said that exchanging favors with others in the organization, exchanging favors with others in the organization for mutual benefit, exchanging favors, exchanging favors with other individuals, you exchange favors with others in the organization for mutual benefit, others in the organization for mutual benefit, for the mutual benefit. Another one, divide and rule within the organization, dividing and ruling within the organization, leaking confidential information. It's also leaking confidential information about the organizational activities, leaking confidential information about the organizational activity, confidential information about the organizational activities to the media, So they are very many. And that one we have said, we have summarized them. They are the different organizational politics. What are the types of the organizational politics? Where somebody who has power is trying to use that power to influence decision-making and behaviors within the organization. And we also discussed what are the causes of organizational politics. Question 2D, describe 4 factors to consider. Describe 4 factors to consider. Describe 4 factors to consider while designing. 4 factors to consider while designing a board evaluation tool. A board evaluation tool. Board evaluation tool. Formats. The first important thing here is first somebody to tell us what are the different types of board evaluation tools, or what is an example of a board evaluation tool? An example of a board evaluation tool. That is the only way, or that is some of the ways you can simplify a question so that you can answer it. If you know an example of a board evaluation tool, then it will be easier to answer. But if you don't know, then you'll be giving us very many rumors. What are the factors to consider? Okay, not factors. I want to see what is the meaning or what is the type of board evaluation tool. An example of board evaluation tool. Self-assessment appraisal. Another one. So self-assessment is where the organization has its own structured questions, balanced scorecard, questionnaire, correct. So what are the factors you need to consider while designing or while selecting certain evaluation tool? If you are to choose, yes, the 360, correct, the 360-degree feedback, the self-assessment, the questionnaires, etc. They are basically benchmarking, okay, correct answer, Margaret. Now, what are the factors to consider when you want to choose a certain tool for your organization? If you understand that this is a board evaluation tool, then what are some of the factors you can consider? Cost-effective, correct answer. If it's cost-effective, correct answer. Objectivity, cost. The objectivity, if it's objective, actually the tool must be objective and fit for the purpose. What else? The skills and competence required. The skills and competence required. Skills and competence required. Why are we saying size of the board? Why are we saying size of the board? I am yet to understand. Why are you saying size of the board as a factor? Yet we have been insisting that a good governance practice is that the board should be of optimum size. So why do you need to consider the size of the board? We don't want to imagine that you're having either a large or a small board structure, because a good organization should be of optimum board size. So why should you consider the board size for you to design a board evaluation tool? Why? Or what is the reasoning behind the size of the board? Maybe I'm the one who is not getting it. The reporting procedures. The reporting procedures of the tool. The reporting procedures of the tool. After you have evaluated, how will the board get that information? The reporting procedures of the board. The reporting procedures of the tool. Yes, Margaret, it is true. It should be simplified. Actually, some answers are simplified and customized towards the organization. Simplified and customized towards the organization. That is, it has been made in a way that is meeting the needs of the organization. So I do not think in any way, I do not think the size of the board in any way cannot be an answer. The size of the board cannot be an answer. So that was yes, objective, you have said the objectivity, etc. So that was the question 2. Question 3. Discuss 5 characteristics of a strong board culture. Discuss 5 characteristics of a strong board culture. 5 characteristics of a strong board culture. As we have agreed, the first important thing, Whitney, why do you think it's an answer? The characteristics of a strong board culture. The first important thing is we ask ourselves, I am asking you, the good or the governance practice of an organization is that the board should, the board side, when we were discussing, um, what? The governance structures, one of the subtopics is the board size. And we said, when you talk of the board size, it should neither be too large. What was the explanation that we gave? What is the explanation that we gave? It should neither be too large that it limits active participation of the board members, or it should not be too small that it limits the skills or the mix of skills within the organization. So I am asking myself, how will you convince me that when you want to design a board evaluation tool, you will either talk of, if the size was large, then you use benchmarking, you use balanced scorecard. Is that the explanation that you'll give? Because at least we have said, what are the different tools? You have benchmarking, we have the other one, the self-assessment, questionnaires. I do not see in any way. The standard practice is that it should be of optimum size. Maybe, as you, Whitney, is saying that it depends with what you will explain, I would like to see that explanation. So the first thing is the strong, the question 3A was testing on the characteristics of a strong board culture. When you talk of the board culture, what is the meaning of a board culture? What is the meaning of a board culture? All of you are giving the characteristics. What is the meaning of a board culture? Is the shared values and the beliefs that characterize a certain board. The shared values and beliefs or ideals that characterize a certain board. So when you talk of a strong board culture, it means some books will tell us that it is more of a healthy board culture. So what are some of the answers? One, there are very many. These are some of the open-ended questions. One, a diverse board. A diverse board, meaning that it has mix of skills and competencies, the gender, age, etc. It's a diverse board. Another one, it has independent. Which no matter the way you will convince me, if I am the one who is up in that answer sheet, you will not convince me. A board with more members. And I will not accept. Trust within the board members. Then why did we study the governance practice? Trust within the board members. trust within the board members. Trust, if there is trust within the board members. Another one is what we have said on the accountability, equality, correct answer, accountability, a culture of accountability. Somebody can be held accountable. The one that I've seen here, equality, equality within the board. Everyone is treated equally. Another one, innovations, innovations within the board. Independent judgments. There are very many independent judgments. Independent judgments within the board. Compliance. It's a board that complies. We are just saying that a culture, the values, the beliefs, the ideals that characterize a certain board, when you say it is a strong one, it is giving us the perspective of a healthy board, a good board culture, or shared values and beliefs. So very many. So that was the culture. Question 3B. Assess 5 strategies for developing emotional intelligence within the board. Assess 5 strategies of developing emotional intelligence within the board. Assess 5 strategies. We assess 5 strategies of for developing emotional intelligence, for developing emotional intelligence, for developing emotional intelligence within the board, for developing emotional intelligence within the board. It was a 10 marks question. The first important thing, somebody must have identified what is the meaning of emotional intelligence. What is the meaning of emotional intelligence so that it can make sense? What is the meaning of emotional intelligence? What is the meaning of emotional intelligence? Because that is the main wording of the examiner. Provided somebody knew what is the meaning of emotional intelligence, then it refers to understanding your own emotions as well as the emotions of other people. So what do you think are some of the strategies that we can employ? What are some of the strategies that we can employ within a board so that somebody can understand their own emotions as well as the emotions of other people? Musa, how do you explain those points? You know, the more you just list them, the more it cannot be easier to mark them. How do you frame them so that it can be easy? What is a strategy? The meaning of a strategy is an action plan. What is an action plan that you can use so that the members of the board can understand their own emotions as well as the emotions of other people. Musa, if you just listen them that way, then it is not easy to get a mark. It is not in any way easy to get a mark. Having team building activities. You have team building activities to do what? You have the team building activities to do what? When we were discussing this, I said, yes, Sheila, now that is the first, the team building, because of the social aspect. Remember, one of the components of emotional intelligence is a social skill. One of the components is a social skill. So what can you do so that you can develop the social skill? I said, and I want to repeat, that anytime you are asked the concept or the question on emotional intelligence, then somebody must be paraphrasing from the components of emotional intelligence. And that is why I'm saying, the way Musa is listing them, then it is not easy for somebody to give you a mark. So when you talk of the strategy for developing emotional intelligence, then you say self-regulation. So how is that an answer? Yes, Cynthia, you paraphrase, provided you remember the answers that we said are the components of emotional intelligence, and then you make them as a strategy. That is the only way you can get an answer. But just listing the way they have been listed there and saying that, okay, self-regulation is the ability to think or ability to think before speaking or reacting, and you want to say that that is a strategy, that is not a strategy. That is a component of emotional intelligence. So I first have the answer one, the one that I have. One is a team building. Team building. The first way we can develop emotional intelligence is through team buildings. How? It helps in the development, or it helps in the development of the social, helps in development of the social skills. Social skills, the development of social skills within the board members. Or the social skills, you talk of the team building enables the board members to form. The explanation, the team building enables the members of the board to form meaningful relationships. So when you're talking of the meaningful relationships, you are explaining the concept of social skill, because one of the component of social skill is one of the components of emotional intelligence is a social skill. So how do we develop it? Having the team building projects, etc. The other one, how do you develop self-awareness? What can you say? How do you develop self-awareness within the board? What is the meaning of self-awareness? Training. How do you train? Or what do you train? training the board members on their weaknesses and everything. You can easily talk of, it's okay, let us have it this way, Cynthia, having self-awareness workshops, having self-awareness workshops, having self-awareness workshops. I said that the way you frame the answers, we are still giving the same answers that Musa has given us, but the way he has framed it, no one can even give them a mark, because somebody will say that this person interpreted the question on the components of emotional intelligence. But we are still giving the same answers. Having self-awareness workshops, having the self-awareness workshops. So what do you train there? You train the board members, or it helps the board members, helping the board members understand and recognize, to help the board members understand and recognize their own strengths and weaknesses, 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 the board members to understand. It helps the board members understand their own strengths and weaknesses. What else? Now let us develop self-regulation. How do we develop self-regulation? I want you to see the way you frame the answers. We are still answering the way Musa gave us, but now we want to answer it as a strategy. We will insist, and even when the exams comes, we will insist that before you answer, identify the main wordings. That is why I pointed out the word strategy. A strategy is an action plan. And what are you developing? Emotional intelligence. What are the components of emotional intelligence? Those are the things that we are developing. So what are the action plans that we can use to develop the components of emotional intelligence? So, okay, yes, the self-awareness on the training, correct answer. So how do you develop the self-regulation? How do you develop the self-regulation? Just to remind you, the self-regulation, we said, it is the ability to think before you, the ability to think before you react. The ability to think before you react. The other strategy that was direct is, or the other strategy that we can use to develop the self-regulation mechanism is by what we call the use of peer group discussions, use of peer group discussions within the board, use of peer group discussions, within the board, peer group discussions within the board. How will it help us? It helps the members. It helps the members develop. It helps the members. Actually, it helps the members communicate and share experiences. Members communicate and share experiences appropriately. Share experiences appropriately. Members appropriately. So the peer group discussions, they are open forums. People share their expectations. People are able to speak or react effectively or appropriately without any intimidation or threats. So the peer group discussions, the self-regulation, ability to react or to think before you speak, and also to develop and also to help you communicate effectively without, I've also seen somebody talking of using of questionnaires and everything that will help people. Before you think, you are tested, your communication skills. Because the self-regulation is more of communication skills. Do you have proper communication skills? The proper communication skills. I also want you to tell us, how do you develop the empathy skills? Yes, Nelly, correct answer. For the empathy, how do you develop empathetic skills? There's development of policies and procedures dealing with grievances within the organization. That is a correct way. Actually, that was one of the more answers on the development of policies and procedures, because we are trying to develop the empathetic skill, understand the feelings of other people. We develop the policies and procedures. Policies and procedures to deal with grievances within the organization or within the board. So it will help to develop what? The empathetic skills. It helps the members to develop the empathetic skills. Or to understand, help the members understand. Actually, let us use the word, helps the members understand the feelings of other people. Feelings of other people. We are still explaining empathy. Empathy, you are understanding the feelings. I can assure you that most of us, yes, the way you have said engaging in CSR activities, then you ensure you explain a concept. I hope people are understanding the way we are paraphrasing the answers. We are trying to ensure we are discussing the components of emotional intelligence, but we need to have an action plan in our answering. We are not being asked the components of emotional intelligence. Your answering must have an action plan. What are we having as an action that will help us solve or develop a certain skill? The last one, motivation. The last component is motivation. It is having the strength to keep going when there are obstacles in life. How can you develop the motivation? The motivation, self-motivation refers to the, I have said self-motivation refers to the ability or the strengths to keep going where there are obstacles in life? How can you develop self-motivation within the board? Setting of objectives. Obviously, setting of objectives. Setting of goals within the board. We have a goal. Even if there are hard situations or we are experiencing some difficulties, we need to be committed to our goals. So setting of goals within the board. Setting of goals within the board, it helps the members to keep on moving, even in harsh situations. The reasons why somebody is studying up to this, up to now, 9:30, it's because they have set their goals that I need to ensure I complete this thing. That is the reason. Even in harsh situations, they are moving on. So setting of goals within the board, setting of goals within the board. Setting of goals within the board. It refers to, or it helps the members to have strength to keep going when there are obstacles. It helps them board members to keep going when there are obstacles within the board. When there are obstacles within the board. I want to say that yes, having a reward system, it's also a thing because it will encourage the members to keep, we are aiming something. I want to say that most of us, just as you have seen, the way you had interpreted the first time, when we were discussing, we agreed, yes, any question dealing with emotional intelligence, you are discussing the components of emotional intelligence. That is very much okay. But check the wording of the examiner. We are insisting, and we will continue insisting, you cannot answer a question without understanding the main wording of the examiner. Analyze them, have them. Somebody was saying if you check the answers, the strategy that we have used is not the alpha and omega. We do not want to say that what we have said, that the use of peer groups, team building, self-awareness, workshops, that it is the main answer. No. The only thing that we wanted to see is that somebody is showing an action plan that is intended to achieve a certain component of emotional intelligence. That one is something that we are looking for, because we want the board members to have emotional intelligence. And we know the components of emotional intelligence. So what will we do so that we answer? So the two main words of the examiner in that question were the strategies and then the components of emotional intelligence. Because anyway, if somebody could have given different answers, like I saw somewhere, somebody was talking of the different type of strategies, operational strategy, tactical strategy. Is that an answer? So the two main things that were being tested, do you understand what is the meaning of a strategy, an action plan? Yes. Do you understand what are the components of emotional intelligence? Yes. Then give us, combine them. And then you give them as an answer. If you decided to give us self-regulation, it means this and that. That is not an answer. That is not an answer the way the examiner was testing. Question 3. Question 3. No, question 4. Question 4. Question 4. Explain 4 types of corporate cultures. Say 4 types of corporate culture. We want to say that the examiner can use the word corporate culture, or the examiner can use the word organizational culture. So let us add this synonym here, because the examiner can use those ones. Corporate culture or the organizational culture. What are the types of organizational culture or the corporate culture? The types of corporate culture or the organizational culture. What is a culture? We have said that they are the shared values and beliefs that characterize a certain organization. I want us, even the others, to correct the answers that we are giving now. The types of organizational culture. One, yes, for the hierarchy culture, I want us to call it the role culture. So, yes, Musa, the power culture. I want us to explain them. I want us to explain them. The power culture, it's a type of culture. It's a type of culture that depends on the central authority. The type of culture that depends on the central authority, on the central authority, on the central authority as the main source of power within the organization. It's a type of culture that depends on the central authority, that depends on the central authority as the main source of power, as the main source of power within the organization, as the main source of power within the organization. You can continue and say, it is mostly applicable in small organizations. Mostly applicable in small organizations. It's a type of culture that depends on the central authority as a source of power within the organization. The one that Kojo has given us, the hierarchy or the role culture. Let us use the word the role culture instead of the hierarchy, the role culture. It is a culture that is characterized by bureaucratic pillars, a culture that is characterized by bureaucratic, the one hierarchy you have said, the bureaucratic pillars, the bureaucratic pillars, culture that is characterized by the bureaucratic pillars. Within an organization, So what is the bureaucratic pillar? The hierarchy. That here we are having hierarchy. Before you come up with a certain our behaviors are dependent on what the authority or the people in the higher level dictate. So the bureaucratic or the hierarchy culture. The other one, as I've said, I want you to correct there even in your notes, is the task culture. Task culture. the task culture. It is where people of different skills, it's a culture. It's a culture that brings together, a culture that brings together people of different skills, people of different skills to work together as a team, to work together as a team, to work together as a team. And the last one, it's a type of culture that brings together people of different skills, a type of culture that brings together people of different skills to work together or to work as a team, a culture that brings together people of different skills to work as a team, to work as a team. The other one, and the last one is the personal culture. The personal culture. Please ensure you correct even in your notes, the personal culture. Personal culture. It's a culture where different professional teams, it's a culture where different professional teams come together, different professional teams come together to form an organization. Different professional teams come together to form an organization where each team performs its own work, where each team performs its own work, each team performs its own work, and authority is by mutual respect. And the authority is by mutual respect. And the authority is by mutual respect. She refers to a culture where different professional teams come together to form an organization where each team performs its own work and authority is by mutual respect. And the authority is by mutual respect. Authority is by mutual respect. The role culture, I've said, is a culture. The role culture is a culture that is characterized by bureaucratic pillars within the organization. The one that we have talked of, the hierarchy. The hierarchy. Bureaucratic pillars within the organization. So everything that is done within that organization is based on the bureaucracy. I want also to ask, I want us to write there down factors affecting development of organizational culture. Factors affecting development of organizational culture. Factors affecting development of organization culture. Yes, Kojo, I want you to correct that. The marketing and the clan culture, I found them to be more of financial markets. I found them to be more of financial markets. That is why I've said that even in the notes, I want you to write this one as the main powers. These ones, we derive them from the types of cultures that, these cultures that I have given here, I have derived them from the foundational theories of human resource. The foundational theories of human resource, we have one known as the organizational behavior. Previously, it was a topic or a unit in the CS classes. When you go through the organizational behavior theory, it tries to explain what are the different or expected cultures within the organization. Although there are others like process culture, the performance culture, and etc. But the ones that we had as the main one from different scholars under the organizational behavior, they focus on this form. So yes, the performance, the learning, they are answers, but the four main from the organizational behavior, they are these ones. So what are the factors affecting development of organizational culture? One, the history of the organization, the history of the organization, the history of the organization, the history of the organization in regard to its values, the history of the organization in regard to its values. Another one, the management and leadership of the organization, the management and leadership of the organization. Another one, the goals and objectives of the organization, the goals and objectives of the organization, the goals and objectives of the organization. Another one, you can say the locational culture, locational culture, locational culture, dictated by the location of the organization, dictated by the location of the organization, location of the organization, dictated by the location of the organization. Dictated by the location of the organization. So those are the some of the factors affecting the development of the organizational culture. Question 4B, Musa have said that I have gone through the organizational behavior and the answers that we have said, yes, those power culture, the learning culture, there are types of organization cultures, yes, but the ones that I found to be more, and that is why I've said that you correct them even in your notes, to be more, and even to be cited by most of the scholars that were developing the organizational behavior and this organizational culture, they gave the four main as the others. And I've said that, yes, there are other types of organization culture. Those are also cultures, but the four main from the organizational behavior theory are these four of them. Question 4B, describe 5 ways of increasing board diversity. Describe 5 ways of increasing board diversity. That one is a direct question. What are the answers? 5 ways of increasing board diversity. Describe 5 ways of increasing board diversity within the organization? What are the ways of increasing board diversity? Ways of increasing board diversity. What is the meaning of board diversity? What is the meaning of board diversity? What is the meaning of board diversity? I want us to finish question 4. Then question 5, I'll discuss with question 1. What is the ways of increasing board diversity? The distinguishing feature that differentiates one employee from the other, that is true. That is the distinguishing feature. So how do we increase board diversity? Yes, having a mix of skills and competence within the board. Having a mix of skills and competence within the board. Another one? Another way? Yes, having members of different age groups or the age within the board, because we are talking of the age diversity. Another one? Having a gender balance board, because most of the boards are male dominated. So having females, so it's having females. Having both females and males within the board, female and males within the board, because we are talking of the board diversity. Another one? Talk of this one. Having independent directors in the board. And having, because of the diversity aspect here is on more of independence requirement. The independence requirement. The independence requirement. And then another way of increasing is the board consisting of persons from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. The ethnic backgrounds. Somebody was just writing age diversity, board diversity, mix of skills diversity. Did you get the answer? No. Framing of answers. It's better you talk of introduce more independent directors within the board, ensuring that they are adding of females. You add females in case of a male-dominated board. You are increasing. You are not being as the types of diversity. So if you just talked of age diversity, that the board should have age diversity. You are introducing or you want members or young persons to be within the board. The other question, the last one for today. Examine 6 ways of ensuring effective board succession. 6 ways of ensuring effective board succession. What is the meaning of board succession? That is a concept under the corporate governance. Ways of ensuring effective board succession. What is the meaning of board succession? What is the meaning of board succession? I want us to first define what is the meaning of board succession. That is a concept under corporate governance. For those of us who have been in class, I have been insisting that boardroom dynamics got borrow some questions from the corporate governance, and not only boardroom dynamics, even the governance audit will ask you questions that we want to imagine and say that you have done corporate governance and therefore you can answer. What is the meaning of board succession? The process of planning and managing the transition of board members over time, or the process of ensuring that in case of any vacancy in the position of a board, then there is somebody who is filling it, or having someone to replace another in case of vacancy. Correct answer, Esther. So what are some of the guidelines? This one is what you are being asked at the intermediate level. What are the guiding principles of effective board succession? Can you remember most of us, some of us who are with me when we were at the corporate governance class? There is a common question in the corporate governance class that we commonly answer. Correct answer, Whitney. Having a nomination committee. Having a nomination committee. Having a nomination committee, because the nomination committee is a committee that is discharged or that has been given the mandate of ensuring effective succession planning. Effective, yes, having a succession policy within the organization. Correct answer. Having a succession policy within the organization. The succession policy within the organization. Having a succession policy within the organization. And that one? Margaret, hapana, hakuna succession planning committee, ni nomination committee. Succession planning in the organization inafanywa na nomination committee. Kuna succession planning committee. Maybe you want to tell me that your organization maybe has a succession planning committee, but the corporate governance standard or the main functions of a nomination committee, if you are even to be tested, you will see that you're talking of ensuring that we have the skills within the organization. Another one, I want to see what you can tackle. How do you ensure there is effective succession planning within the organization? Another one is the training and development of the existing board members, training and development of the existing board members to ensure competency, training and development of the existing board members, training and development of the existing board members, to ensure competency, actually to build competencies, assessing the current and future needs, assessing the current and future needs of the board, assessing the current and future needs of the board based on the strategic plan, based on the strategic plan, based on the strategic plan. Another one. Matching the capabilities, When you talk of the capabilities, the existing workforce, matching the capabilities of the board, matching the capabilities of the board with the existing duties or responsibilities. You match the skills. What we commonly say in the human resource, what we commonly say in the human resource, the placement. When you match the skill with the position, then that person will build the competency and ultimately, in case of any vacancy in that organization, then this person can fill that position. So you ensure even the current existing workforce, they are matching their capabilities with the existing responsibilities. What else have I left out? What is the another possible answer? On succession planning? Please ensure you can, these are questions that they are on the corporate governance class. Ensure you can answer also on the challenges, the advantages of succession planning in the board. You can also add definition of skills. Definition. Actually, it is the one that we have talked of, assessing the current and future needs. Also, you can talk of, yes, Margaret, that is what I wanted to talk of, the definition of skills and diversity needed to support the strategy. Definition of skills, but I've seen that it's the one that you have said here, assessing the current and future needs of the board. It is given the same aspect that you are trying to explain on the diversity or on the skills required. Another one, you can also talk of the development of a board policy. Okay, we talked of it, succession policy. I think those answers are enough. Evaluation, what about this one? Musa? On evaluation? Because here I wanted to add on the succession policy, it must have some tenure, the tenure limits. The tenure limits of the board members. The tenure limits of the board members. So at least this succession policy is telling us that at the end of 3 years, there will be a vacancy. So we must ensure we have the person who will fill that position. Yes, the succession policy. So those are some of the strategies, or actually this, I have said that the one, Roger, these tenure limits or this succession policy will have such answers. The tenure limits, your age, who are the persons covered, what is the meaning of a policy? It's basically a guideline. What are some of the common contents of a policy? One, the persons covered under that policy. Two, what are the areas? What are the areas or the issues that may lead to the vacancy within the organization, etc. So, yes, Rachel, you can talk of early recruitment. Is that point on early recruitment of qualified personnel within the board? Early recruitment of qualified personnel within the board. Early recruitment of qualified personnel within the board. Early recruitment of qualified personnel within the board. Consolata, selection of the right person for the job is the one I've talked of matching. We ensure we match the persons with the right responsibilities. You match the capabilities of the board with the existing duties. That one is a question 4. For question 5 and question 1, we will discuss next week. Try to answer question 1 and then we can discuss next week.